Welcome to Mending Threads, a transformation series. This is your safe place and your stronghold for whole body wellness. You know, last week we had great discussion on our theme, which is stress and trauma, and how stress and trauma brings us closer and takes us through the transformation process. So we have some special guests this morning, but our first guest is going to be Miss Darla Gooden, who is the author of The Restorer of the Breach.
I mean, we lived in a big house, we had nice cars and everything. My mama was a doctor and my daddy was a lawyer. You know, the Huxtables flipped the other way. And I had everything I wanted. When I was about, as far as I can remember, I guess about 4 or 5, my daddy would come in at night and tell me good night. And he would rub my back and, you know, just tell me how much he loved me. Mama was kind of sick, so he took over a lot of her duties and everything. And then he would, one day, instead of rubbing my back, he started rubbing my thigh. Now, it didn't feel quite right, but I just went, oh, okay. By then, Mama was getting sicker and sicker. And one day, Daddy touched me, and it hurt. It really hurt. I didn't like that. And he said, if you tell Mama, I'm going to kill her. And shortly after that, Mama died. And it was just me and him. And he started doing stuff to me all the time with his hands, and it just made me so, ugh. Then one day, Daddy got on top of me and he did it. I was so devastated, but I couldn't tell anybody because Mama was dead. And he said if I told my auntie, he would kill her too. And I thought, that's why Mama died, because he thought I was going to tell her. Well, it went on and on and on. And see, we'd have to go to church on Sunday. I forgot to tell you, Daddy was an associate pastor at the church. And he would get up there and he would pray and talk about how you should treat people right and everything. But he didn't treat me right. Then, one day I just ran. I got tired and I ran. And I ended up on the streets. I was going to college, but I didn't care if he didn't pay for anything. And I was on the streets, and then I started doing stuff with men to get money. I might as well do it with strangers than do it with my daddy. I eventually got out the life, and I got the courage to tell my auntie, and they did arrest my daddy. And he's in jail now. And he had the nerve to write me and ask me if I could forgive him.
I'd like to thank Sister Mama Sonia from Three Sisters in the Spirit Ministry for giving us a good, clear breakdown of some of the trauma and issues with people who are struggling with sexual abuse and many other forms of incest and sexual abuse. But we have with us this morning someone who put those feelings and those movements to words. And I have with us this morning Ms. Darla Gooden, who is author of The Restorer of the Breach. And I think that I want to understand and welcome you. I welcome you, and I have not talked with you in some time, and this is just a spiritual thing to be with you.
It's
this
the
morning.
same for me too.
It is. So I was looking at the title of this, so I wanted to know how did you choose the topic, The Restorer of the Breach, and what is what is this topic for you? How did this topic come about?
Well, first of all, thank you again for having me on the show. I'm
You're
just
welcome.
really good. It's a good place to be in the place with you. Dr. Lewis, this book was written in 2010. Actually, it was published in 2010. And it had to do with the outlining of the methodology of a pedophile. It's a true story. My children were sexually abused, several of my children. I have 6, and these were my sons that were sexually abused. And the restore of the breach is really the repair of the breach, and that's who God is for me. He not only repairs, but he restores. And so it gave me an opportunity when I was going through the process of the trial, because it talks about what my family went through from the time I found out about what happened to my sons, all the way into the man getting sentenced. So I put that into this book, especially journaling while I was going through what I was going through. I went to the library one day and I was looking for something to speak to my heart. But I found a lot of information out there from a clinical perspective. However, I did not find too many things that really comfort me from a parental perspective. And I said, you know what, I need to really put these words into play. When you're going through trauma, it's so hard to understand certain terminology. You don't understand trauma like the clinician will give you exactly
the experience,
exactly
you mean.
Right. So, but to understand what that means, to what that feels, how to connect those dots that needs to be connected. When I was going through what I was going through, I remember sitting with my psychologist at the time, and I could not understand why the tears were coming down. And I kept saying to her, I can't stop crying, and I'm crying, and I cannot stop crying. And she said, darling, because it's secondary trauma.
Yeah.
And it just resonated, But during that time, you're not understanding what is happening because you're so almost paralyzed. But at the same time, you're trying to function.
And you're sort of going through, looking at yourself from the outside and inside simultaneously to see what is going on.
Right, exactly, with you, and then you're thinking about your children. And of course, as mothers, we always pull back and see what we can do for our children first. My thing was, I'm going to get them through the process of going through therapy and things of that nature, and I'll deal with myself last. But I was breaking down, falling apart. They were a little bit more grounded, because during that process, after I found out what he did and he was arrested, we had that time frame period where you had the legal system had to take its course, and so that was a period of time. But during that time, I had them going through therapy, but I wasn't.
So what are some of the questions that you were asking yourself? What are some of the questions that, in order to engage in the transformation process and to move through for healing, there's some questions that you had?
The question that I had was, first of all, the betrayal. How could I allow someone to come to my children who was a church worker who violated my sons? How could I not see signs of what had happened to my children? Why didn't they tell me? The guilt that you live with as a parent, not knowing you're not there 24 hours a day to be with your children, but at the same time, how did you miss it? Someone sitting at your table, someone who's always engaged, always coming over, grooming you and grooming the children. You just miss it because you were being so groomed.
And another way to look at it, and we talk about that for the healing, is that what is really going on is you actually honoring your trust in the belief in the person and also in God.
Absolutely.
So you are actually honoring that.
Right.
So it was actually the person who allowed you to do that.
Right.
So the guilt comes from not reading, not looking at it, not listing what the beliefs are.
Right.
So it's rethinking it.
And it was crazy too, Dr. Lewis. As I was coming out, before my son came and told me about the accuser, this is the strangest thing. And that's when I started having some weird. It just started. I remember going to the elder at the church saying, this guy is really starting to get on my nerves for some reason. You know, he just seems to come over more than normal. And it started to get next to me, you know, and she said, well, she just kind of brushed it off. She said, well, maybe he's just trying to be helpful. But that wasn't the case. It was those other feelings.
So you were sensing something,
Sensing
distrusting
something.
what you were sensing.
Exactly.
And so there was something that I read here so that was the beginning to come together between your spiritual self and something outside your environment. So you were pulling it together to make that awareness.
Right.
That's right.
It really was that way.
So how did can you share with us your children, because this is important to leave something that we can give to other people regarding this, because there's something that we need to look at, behaviors, how children responded through the process. Can you share any of that?
Well, what I can say is there's so many things, because this went over for a period of time. With my sons were around the ages between 10 and 12.
Yes.
So it was a period of time. My son was 17 by the time I found out what had happened to him. And during that time, that adolescent stage and teenage stage that they go through, a lot of their feelings and their emotions and all those changes I attributed to they're just this
growing up,
exactly.
Yes.
Right. So I didn't really, I missed those things, but when I look back, hindsight is always 20/20, you know.
Yes.
And so when I look back, I was able to pick up some things along the way. You know, just him taking my children back, but they would come back looking awful strange, and I should have questioned it. You know,
that is something that you
right,
know now.
Right, exactly. And I'm like, something is a little bit strange about this, and I should have questioned those things. And then there were a lot of lies, but I did not know the lies until I got to the other side. Like, he would bribe my children. And bribery and seduction, when they get a certain age, because we talk about good and bad touch when they're children, but as they get older, we should talk about bribery and seduction.
Yes.
And I did not, he would always bribe my children. He would say, in other words, if he would do an act on my son, he would take him off and say, let me show you how to drive. You know, so it would just make,
because that was something they desired.
Exactly.
One of their greatest desires.
Or he'll give them a video game, something that they've been waiting for, or someone. I remember this lady bought a Christmas gift from my kids, a video game. He got the game from her and went to them and act like he gave it, you know, bought it for them.
Yes.
You know, things that keep them quiet, he would say he would do, but that's not what happened. But so there were little things like that I should have paid more attention to. I was busy working 3 jobs as a single mom, so I didn't always have time, because he groomed me very well, because this was a person in the church.
That's right.
So he was taking them to Bible study. He would take them, you know, and he would call me and say, you know what, Evangelist Starla, I'll be going by that way. Is it all right if I come by and pick up your kids and drop them off for you? So he would do stuff like that to where it would relieve me, because I'm working 3 jobs and I can't get there, but I'll meet him up there later on.
Yes.
But didn't know that he was taking them in front, you know, in the back of the church and having these acts taking
So
place.
one of the things that we can share, and that must have been really awesome for you, because as you're talking, I'm imagining you going through that, and then I'm imagining myself, you know, like I would have loved to have known what to do, because I see the hurt and the pain that you went through.
Right, because the thing is, I truly believe is this is more of what to do when you don't know what to do.
When you don't know what to do.
Right, and that book was written for that purpose, because a lot of parents, now professionals know what to do, but a lot of parents, if you ask them, what do you do when this happens, a lot of them cannot tell you where to go and what to do. It doesn't click to them to fill out go get a police report. It doesn't click to them. They say, well, do you call 911? We know what to do when people die for funerals. We know how to go and be there and comfort for the families, but the church does not know how to be able to embrace this family, be able to foster healing that's necessary, or even to get the parents empowered enough to be able to at least say something has happened to my child.
So if you go back and you would ask your church or ask anyone for anything during that period of time, can you give me 3 or 4 things that you think that would be helpful? You know, from your experience or from what, from
What,
the book?
and it's based on what I would have needed.
Yes, what
I would have
you.
needed.
What would you
I would have needed someone to come walk with me down to the precinct.
That's right.
I had never been there before in my entire life. It was a scary place. My children had never been in the principal's office. They had never ever had anything like this that happened to where I needed to be there. So I needed someone to walk with me, hold my hand, and let me know that my kids and myself will be okay. Now I had someone, but it's nothing like being able to feel that from every direction that you need from. And so I didn't get that. I got it from several people, but at large, people are so busy blaming the parent, but they don't blame the person who done this crime. So if you could get people to realize that these family, we were victimized as a family, so they need food. It was days I was sitting there and I didn't even think about feeding myself, you know, or eating. My children needed someone to come and just sit down with them, and someone safe, of course, being able to sit down and say, let me help clean the house, let me help take you to therapy, you know, to be able to offer those type of services when people are in crisis is extremely important, because my stuff, this was on the news. So this was it was not like I could keep it hidden. It was out there. And so I had to protect my children, I had to protect myself and try to carry that alongside. But it would have been so great if the community knew what to do and knew how to be able to foster healing. And one of the things I truly believe is being able to be there, not judgmental, but be able to be there offering food, offering a ride, offering something, do something that's going to help that family feel better, so that they can begin to heal during that time.
I just have one other question, and I'm sure now I want to be honest. I have not read the full book. You may have it in here.
Right.
I really want to know what would you say to help another person go through this? What did you hold on to? What did you grab hold of? What did you say to yourself to get yourself to go through this traumatic experience?
I honestly like the Journey of Hope to Healing, the play that we offer, because the key to this was hope. One of the things that we have to look on the other side of hope is fear. And I was so afraid, but I had to hold on to hope at the same time. Hope that my children will ever get better. They will get better. No one ever really tells you that people can overcome this. So you think that, oh my God, they're doom and gloom. They'll never go where, they'll never be anything. They'll probably end up being in jail. They'll probably, you know, all these fears come to your mind. All these thoughts run through your mind. But the truth of it is, there's hope. They can overcome. They can be productive citizens in society and do very well. So that's the other side of the breach that you have to get to. So when I think about the play that Sister Mama Sonia written, you know, as a playwright, it is wonderful because she talks about the hope of healing, you know, the journey of hope to healing. So, and it is a journey. But you can't wait to see.
I can't wait to see the whole play.
Oh my goodness. It's an awesome play. Awesome. This one was brilliantly written. I mean, just awesome. And Broadway music doing the director, it is just phenomenal to see them at work.
Yes. Well, look, you have shared something with us today. And I know that we're going to use your book. We're going to take this and we'll talk with you later. But we're going to see what we can do in order to answer some of these questions for churches and for people in leadership in the community to help other people through these transformation changes. Okay. So I want to thank you for being with us today.
Oh, well, thank you, Dr. Lewis, for having me. I'm telling you, I know through all the tears, I still continue.
That's right,
and
I'm hoping that you'll come back.
Oh, I
when
will.
we get into the implementation process.
Absolutely.
We want to thank our guest, our earlier guest, Ms. Darla Gooden, and I want to welcome Ms. Keflin Harrington, who is a therapist, and also our Wonder Woman for wellness and recovery. So I want to welcome you, Ms. Harrington. Thank you for today. And I want to talk about I want you to give us and share with us not only the process that you're going through, but we'll eventually talk about some secrets that you must have. Okay, this, because I know that you have been through, I made just a few notes,
Yes,
that
ma'am.
you have gone through the transformation and going through for multiple sclerosis, for chronic arthritis, and I do know that you are functioning well with being legally blind, and I mean nobody can keep you down. So I know the doctors were calling and saying that you couldn't do certain things, and then you called me back a few weeks and said, I got it covered. I'll be there.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
I got this done.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I want to talk to you about it. I want you to share with us some things that you have been through, but help us understand what that is like for you.
Okay, you are correct in the assessment of the physical disabilities being chronic rheumatoid and chronic osteoarthritis that affects the bones and the joints, and also the multiple sclerosis diagnosis, which also affects the joints, the bones, the muscles, and all of that in your body. As a result of those two autoimmune illnesses, I was rendered legally blind. I was functioning at a level where I thought things were going on kind of like an even keel. However, I was stumped, I think maybe in 2018 when I had kidney stones. And after I went through the hospitalization with the kidney stone removals,
Yes.
I think I had a kidney stone that they say was maybe 13.5 centimeters. It was like huge.
Wow.
And the doctors are wondering, you felt no pain? How did you not know you were going through this? So I went through that, and then I ended up in kidney failure. Still not really sure how that happened, so I have to do dialysis. When I say we, I'm talking about my mother, and that's a key too.
Yes.
This is not something that Keflin can do by herself.
Yes.
It's more or less creating a team that helps you and that idealizes the same way you do. One of my cousins, my favorite cousin, tells me that I have a vivid imagination, and I've had that since I was a kid. And I'll give you an example of that. After we started the diagnosis, with the dialysis rather, like a week later, they found a lymphoma cancer in my liver, and I had to go through chemotherapy.
Right.
Okay, and glory be to God, who is my strength, my joy, and my everything. I am healed from the cancer and the lymphoma, and my hair is growing back a little bit. So
Yes. And
I
looking
like
cute
it.
with
Well,
you
thank you.
styling it real good.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm trying to get like you, Dr.
Yes,
Lewis.
that's right.
But I think the main secret for me is I set goals, and I do mini goals, MINI, as well as many. Sometimes I get besides myself and get a little too excited with what it is I want to do, and my mother will say, okay, you know, I'm helping you, and then she'll say, I'm 70 years old. She turned 70 this month, but I say, Mama, age is just a number, and you look well, and you're doing well and helping me. And what I mean when I say that, even though we have a lot of adaptive technology available to help people like me who suffer from disabilities, we're still not there where we need to be.
Yes.
Like the Disabilities Act, American with Disabilities Act, was signed by George H. Bush in 1991, that provided equal access to all Americans with those with disabilities, not just to, what is it, education,
Yes.
like the act did in 1963, but now we can get educated, but we have to have ramps so we can get into buildings. You know, the restrooms have to be proper, and we're doing that, so that's a struggle. So I keep that vision in my mind, and I'm thankful to the people who have come before me,
Yes.
you know, that have paid the price for things that I'm unable to do. Like, I know one lady who works at Houston Center for Independent Living. She proudly states that she walked up the ramp, walked up the stairs at the Capitol to lobby for ramps because there were none that were there. And she did
Oh,
it,
wow.
yeah, with her glutes. So she'll say that proudly, and I'm very happy to know her.
So I imagine that going through all of that, and to talk about the cancer and the stiffness of the legs and
Yes.
so it
Everything.
has to. How does that affect you, if I may ask you, your emotions or your I wanted to say anxiety or emotions about these things?
I'm the type of person I'm very determined, and I'm very persistent. And what I found that worked for me, I have to have proper coping skills. And I've learned as a therapist, studying under you, that, coping skills are extremely key. And so not only did my education help, but I've found coping skills that work for me. Like, for instance, I love music, and I love all types of music. So, and I listen to a slew of different people for information to help strengthen me. I look for people who I consider, maybe that's not the right word, like on my level. What I mean is, when I'm talking to somebody or trying to allow somebody into what they call it, like the inner circle,
Yes.
they have to be to the point where if I say, I'm gonna make it to Dr. Lewis's office tomorrow to do something, even though it's raining, they still believe that I can do it.
Yes.
You know,
somebody who's inspiring.
Somebody who inspires me,
who
pushes me.
who can instill hope
Yes.
and belief and strengthens your belief. Yes.
Right. Because if we can't see eye to eye on me being able to do something despite the struggles that I have, we can't really talk about anything. Because a lot of people tell you, oh, you can't do that because you've done this, and oh, okay, well, nice talking to you.
So one of the things through here, I talked with someone the other day that was going through the multiple sclerosis, and they were saying that people have no idea of how it affects your whole being, your body, your mind, your spirit, because you know now that you can't do the things that you used to do. You think that. And then at the same time, you're wanting to move to do that. So one of the things that we have in terms of our theme is to look at beliefs. So do you have any, other than the coping and some things that you say to yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Can you share any of those things that you would?
Yes, ma'am.
say?
That's one of the most important things is your belief system, and what do you believe about yourself. And one of the main things I say to myself, I quote the Bible a lot. Philippians 4:13. Help me, sometimes I miss the scriptures because I haven't been able to look at a Bible per se. And it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I really believe that wholeheartedly. That anything God, but it's like it's limitations with that. We have to line up with God's will. I appreciate you calling me, a Wonder Woman, and I have defied odds because I've been in the hospital, I almost dead, but I say it has nothing to do with me, it's the God in me. And that's what my strength is. And one interesting thing, right after I was healed from the cancer, I think 2 weeks later, I broke my ankle in 2 spots. And I could not walk on my ankle. And I was resigned to my bed. And I said, the main thing I told my mother, I say, when people come and visit me in here, I want to maintain my dignity and respect. I don't want people to lose respect for me because I'm laying in this bed and they're helping me with my therapy, like I'm still doing occupational therapy and physical therapy. And when I was in that bed, I got stronger physically. And both of my therapists said that I got stronger than I had been before I broke my ankle. So, when I was laying in that bed, I didn't say, oh, woe is me, I had that attitude. I'm like, when I get out, I'm going to do such and such. And I always have a goal in front of me. Like, one lady came and I said, oh, next week, Monday when you come, she was the nurse coming to assess me, we're going to meet in the living room. And so my mom, she's like, well, how are you going to do that? And I said, okay, Mr. Jordan, that's my physical therapist. He's going to help me get up. So it's like I had it mapped out in my mind, of what I was going to do. And I do that before I do anything. I see it in my mind's eye.
And I want to share this. When my daughter died, I was like, how could she die? She was just, but I know this, going through the thing, how I yelled and I screamed, like, how could you take her, just 20-something years old, blah, 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 blah. And I went through this whole process of knowing that I could make it through and believe in certain things. But there was a period where I had to give up. In order to, did you experience anything like that, where you had to give up at one time to regain it, to know what to do?
Yes. It's like, like a lot of people say, well, how do you do that, or such and such. It's like, Mother and I were having a talk too, because I'm like, you have to get to the acceptance of where you are.
Yes.
And then once you surrender that, it's to me it's like all about a surrender.
That's right.
You know, and once you're able to surrender it, that's when God can begin to work.
To begin your transformation process.
Yes. And
Okay.
you know, some people call it, you know, personal time or private time, or some people even
Yes.
call it the universe. But when you spend that quiet time with who is your higher power, things begin to happen, and you are able to locate stuff on a different
And
plane.
do something about it.
Right.
So now all of this has taken you to a place where you can share and help other people.
Yes, ma'am.
Where you could not only help people with your words, because they can touch, you can touch them. And you
Yes.
will know, they know that you have been through it, they know what you're saying. And so, and I have encouraged you for many years that this
Mhm.
is, that somehow you have gotten to this place, and that this is something that you have to do.
Yes,
This is
ma'am.
something for you to do to heal other people.
Yes.
Oh, I
And-
want to
and I'm
thank you.
there.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being here today.
Yes.
Okay, Cheryl.
Thank you for having me.
I want to thank our guests for coming out in this cloudy day and this foggy morning, for being with us and to share their stories to help us and others transform any difficult experiences to know where they're going. I want to thank Ms. Darla Gooden. I want to thank Ms. Keflin Harrington, and most certainly Sister Mama Sonia of Three Sisters in the Spirit. Just remember that this week and in the future to renew your beliefs, rebuild faith, and reconnect with family and communities. It is not the circumstances that we meet. It is the manner in which we respond that determines our health, our happiness, and our success. Thank you for